The ETF industry has been in the business of disrupting and improving market access for the past 30 years. ETF issuers, the product providers, sit on the front line of this innovation. Here, we get to hear their stories and learn what it takes to be a disruptor. This is ETF Wavemakers. Welcome to ETF Wavemakers. I am Cinthia Murphy, Head of Research for the ETF think tank. And today I am joined by Adam Curran, founder of Curran Financial Partners. Hi, Adam.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you today and learn about what you've been doing, the moving and shaking you're doing, not only in the retirement planning space, but also in the ETF space. So, you are clearly committed to retirement planning. You build a business around that. You have a show called Retire Y'all that's committed to talking about this. You've written a couple books about retirement planning. So, tell us, first of all, what was the path that led you to this focus? Why is retirement planning so important to you? Is it from personal history? Is it just from an education? What does that interest come from?
Yeah, I can go way back. I mean, I think most people who get into the money business have some sort of aha moment early in their life that causes them to have a penchant for personal finance or capital markets. And growing up, my dad was always on the chopping block, worried about his job security, worked for a defense contractor up in Connecticut. So financial security and job security was a topic we regularly discussed at the kitchen table. So much so that my mom started her own little side hustle as a professional clown. She did birthday parties and animal balloons and face painting, the whole nine. And I grew up in a household with an entrepreneur mother and a father who was a mechanical engineer and was just enamored with capital markets and enamored with hustling and saving money. And went on to go to school in Philadelphia. I got a job on the Philadelphia Stock Exchange trading floor, basically as a runner. They asked me to jump. I was already in the air with a cup of coffee saying how high, and parlayed that position into a role at a large hedge fund. You had to have $20 million to invest with the company. And most people didn't have 21. Most people had hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a very surreal experience being the son of a clown and giving advice to people who have hundreds of millions of dollars on what they should be doing with their money. So started my career in kind of high finance and in the Northeast of America, where there's a lot of Wall Street epicenters. And then my career brought me down, or my lifestyle brought me down to Charleston, South Carolina. And there is no Wall Street epicenter down here. So I had to very quickly learn how to use my skill set and services to help middle America, Main Street investors who were wanting to live an abundant, peaceful retirement, maybe less zeros and commas on their net worth statement. But what I always felt was I felt I can deliver a similar experience to what the individuals who had hundreds of millions of dollars were getting to mainstream Americans, people like my mom and my dad. They deserve the same level of care and the same level of sophistication of people who made their money by being born on third base and who thought they hit a triple. So I created our own firm, Curran Financial Partners, where, as you said, we are very, very niche-y in who we want to help. We want to help retirees, and preferably the people who gravitate to my messaging are God-fearing, flag-waving, unapologetic, conservative people. And I know some of your viewers or listeners who vote with their left hand might have immediately gagged or changed the channel. That's fine. We want them to live an abundant retirement too, but we've gotten pretty clear with the individuals who gravitate to our messaging and the people that we want to help. Which is ultimately the litmus behind why we launched our ETF, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that having a clear niche and a focus area of expertise, I think, is really important to success. I'm just curious, once you cut 3 zeros or 6 zeros from people's investment accounts, does the advice change a lot? Or at the end of the day, when it comes to retirement planning, the principles are the same? Financial security kind of looks like the same regardless of how many zeros on your bank account, or is it a completely different experience?
It's a good question. Obviously, naturally, there's some tax planning involved with ultra high net worth people that we don't even need to consider with a middle class millionaire or a millionaire next door. So naturally, and some trust planning, and of course, they're going to change the estate tax, and there could be some gifting strategies, and but truth be told, I liken it almost to, are you in New York, Cinthia?
Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, similar kind of backdrop.
Mhm.
So, do Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk eat different food than you or I? Right? The answer is no. They just get served in a more theatrical way. They pay for a bigger ambiance, and so the reason I use that analogy is because what I came to learn, a lot of these hedge funds are very good at theatrics. They're very good at um, putting up a facade of sophistication when in reality the lion's share of them failed to beat the S&P 500. So, you put on this dog and pony show, this almost arrogance, this level of sophistication that you're going to provide this good or service that's going to be packaged up with a bow. And naturally, all of us like to virtue signal a little bit. So I think some investors kind of find comfort in being involved with an organization like that. When most people who've been involved in capital markets for long enough know darn well that if you just buy a darn Vanguard index fund, you have a tremendously efficient financial investment chassis. To answer your question, no doubt, I think ultra high net worth people do need a level of sophistication that most kitchen table financial planners are unable to provide. But I think if once you reach a certain level within this business and you take this business seriously, I think a lot of what individuals are paying for with these high finance institutions is theatrics. I think it's a dog and pony show that people are overpaying for to a certain degree. So, one man's opinion on that. One man's opinion who spent time in both areas, though, too.
Yeah, what's interesting is, that world is all about exclusive access, is about high minimums, is about high net worth, right? To your point earlier about, you want to do this for everyday people. Is this what led you to ETFs? How did you find yourself finding your way into the ETF industry and launching your first ETF?
Yeah, like I said, I'm down here in Charleston, South Carolina, 800 miles away from the New York Stock Exchange, which is encouraging when you see these little issuers, taking their little ETF on the road. I mean, it's a great equalizer, and no doubt the big three or big four ETF issuers are make up the lion's share of AUM flows because they charge next to nothing in expense ratios. But it is encouraging, and I root for all people who launch ETFs just because I've come to realize how hard it is to bring one of these things through fruition. The labor intensiveness of it, the capital intensiveness of it, the manpower intensiveness of it is enough to make a lot of people tap out. But to answer your question, we just listen to our clients, and I kept hearing time and time again from people down here in the Low Country that they wanted to invest in the stock market. The stock market had been very good to them. It was a great wealth generation tool over the course of their life, and they wanted to continue to put money into stocks because of their growth proposition. But they were sick and tired of putting their money into businesses that were spouting off on topics that they deemed to be controversial and activist in nature. They looked at me point blank and said, "I want to invest in the stock market, but I will be darned if I invest any of my money in XYZ company." Did you hear what they just said about Florida's parental rights and education bill? I will be darned if any of my money goes into that business over there. Did you see what they said about Georgia's election reform bill? Or Did you see that they signed the Business Roundtable Stakeholder Capital Pledge? Um, Over the course of the past 5 years, we have never seen more publicly traded companies take stances on divisive activist issues. And my clients said to me, I don't want to support these businesses if they don't share my worldview. So naturally, I didn't really want to go about the process of creating an ETF. I just wanted to focus on kitchen table financial planning and retirement planning. But I needed to find some sort of chassis or investment instrument that these individuals can plug into that would honor their beliefs and honor their desires. Because if you're a financial advisor and you're listening to this right now, I know darn well you have heard these very same concerns voiced. I know darn well you've had individuals come to your planning table and say, I don't want to support this company on the left or the right, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most people just simply reply to that with a canned ham response in that, hey, when you invest in a low cost index fund or a mutual fund, there's a good chance some of your money might be divested into these businesses, but they perform really well lately. And part of the good diversification is you're going to own shares of this company and that company. And I don't believe that's honoring your fiduciary duty as an investment advisor. Your fiduciary duty is to honor your client's wishes and live up to the expectations that they're setting for you. And if that client says, I don't want to support that business, I don't want to support woke companies, um, I need to honor that. So when I searched Wall Street for a product that would fit that bill, I wasn't seeing anything out there that I could in good conscience put my clients' money into. There were some Christian-based, biblically responsible investing funds, and there was even some quote unquote conservative funds out there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of a conservative fund, you 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 start to think all the money is going to be in like big crusty sectors of the overall economy, oil and industrials and utility companies. And I come to learn that over the last 10 years, most of the growth of the stock market has been driven by the technology sector. So I said we need to create an instrument that gives our clients broad market exposure to all 11 sectors of the S&P 500. But we want to boycott and we want to eliminate woke companies from our investment universe. And then we want to weight the companies that are left over in the investment universe according to their emphasis on the overall stock market. So we created the God Bless America ETF as a way my clients down here in South Carolina, now people across the whole country have plugged into it, but the people I was looking eye to eye in who said to me, Adam, I want to invest in the stock market. I don't want to support woke businesses. We created an ETF that they could put their money into. Its goal is to track the overall market because of the sector weighting, and give them exposure to the stock market that they can feel good about, knowing that none of their money is providing liquidity to companies that are going out of their way to trounce on their beliefs and their values by making public statements that we deem to be activist in nature. Now, the fund's been launched for about 1 year now. When we created the fund, there was no, there really wasn't how do I massage these words properly? There wasn't a desire for outperformance, right? Like this wasn't like a Kathy Woods ARK fund where we're trying to beat the S&P 500. In reality, all we were trying to do was kind of mirror broad market index. And we kind of understood that there would be years where we under deliver and years where we over deliver. Now that the fund's been launched for about a year, though, I'm starting to drink my own Kool-Aid in that I'm really starting to see that when companies are focused on activism or they're focused on portraying a quote unquote woke kind of ideology, how can they be focused on producing wonderful products and services, growing their customer base, delighting their employees when you have this elephant in the room that they have to pacify and speak to? So now that we're 1 year into the fund being launched, I'm starting to believe that, hey, it's profitable and it's wise. It's a good investment thesis to invest money in companies that are focused on business, focused on products and services, and less focused on activist issues that are dividing our country. That by commenting on, you run the risk of alienating or upsetting 49 to 51% of your potential customers, your employees, your shareholders. So I've been pleasantly surprised at the performance of our fund, and I'm starting to believe that it's a real investment thesis, even though most of the people in the media are calling it thematic. They're calling it unenlightened. They're saying it's a grift to the conservative people out there. They're getting the wool pulled over their eyes. It's something I'm really proud of, and I think the performance has been wonderful. And I think a lot of people are investing their money in it because they feel good about it. People are voting with their wallet. They're voting with their investments, and our fund is there for those individuals.
Yeah, what's cool about the ETF space is exactly that, is the concept of the equalizer, as you call it, or the democratizer, as people like to say, is the access to all sorts of ideas. In the values-based investing space, though, what's interesting is that there's always this perception that to invest in your values, the trade-off is underperformance. And that's something that has plagued a little bit the space. It plagues in general the whole ESG category. It tends to plague this concept that the minute you go, exclusionary, if you will, because the intuitive notion, to your point earlier, is you're just going to exclude a lot of companies and therefore you're going to lag the market. But so what I think is interesting about your approach is that, you are trying to make sure you have exposure to all the sectors. You are making sure it is a diversified approach to deliver as market-like performance as you can, and potentially outperformance, sometimes underperformance. But the idea is that, this isn't really necessarily a trade-off between, if you want to focus on values, you are giving up performance, right? That is really important to the strategy here.
Yeah, I get it. I'm a boglehead in my own right, right? I get low cost indexing. I get, next to nothing in expense ratios. But what the people who are cut from that cloth don't understand is there are large swaths of society in the last couple of years. A lot of these individuals have been banished from polite society. They've been told their beliefs are all of the ugliest words in the dictionary. They've been told that, their thought process is unenlightened. And I think these people are mad. And I think these people are willing to pay extra because I can't compete. None of your issuers can compete with a Vanguard like that. You would go broke overnight at a 5 basis point expense ratio, right? So I think these people are willing to pay more from an expense ratio to scratch this itch they have. And this itch is not being scratched by BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street. None of these large ETF issuers are boycotting and eliminating woke companies from their investment universe. And I had an aha moment with a client. A client looked me in the eye and just said, Adam, I would be willing to sacrifice 1 or 2 percentage points if I knew none of my money was going to support these businesses. And the other thing that the bogleheads say is it's like, oh, this guy running his little tiny ETF in Charleston, South Carolina is not making an impact at all. Or they'll say, what kind of impact are you making by, not putting a $1 million investment in Apple? Apple has a market cap that's, $1 trillion or something. Every little bit counts. And I like to think my little ETF is just one force amongst many others out there that are causing more companies to make activist statements. What I've seen over the last year, I've seen a multitude of publicly traded companies that have come out and have said, we will no longer make statements surrounding social or political topics. And that's all my investors want, right? Now, when I say this as a God-fearing, flag-waving conservative, I'm immediately cast into the book burning audience, right? I'm being an activist, right? I'm simply boycotting companies that I think are not focused on returning shareholder value. I'm boycotting companies that I think have lost their focus. If you're focusing on activism, you are no longer focusing on business.
Yeah, I think what you just highlighted, it is potentially the biggest challenge for every ETF provider, which is the distribution. The gatekeepers like to keep the gates locked, and it is a challenge, and it's a hustle, and it takes time sometimes, and it takes assets. So that's definitely a big hurdle for smaller providers. But to your point, this is the space where entrepreneurs can come in and bring new ideas. I wanted to ask you about the importance of branding when you are a niche provider. I was on your LinkedIn earlier, and I thought it was hysterical how your description is the all-around swell guy who also doesn't check his own LinkedIn very often. I mean, everything about your brand is approachable, is personable, is quirky in a way. So tell me a little bit about how has the brand been important in differentiating, in finding traction? What kind of thought you put into the importance of standing out from a brand perspective?
Yeah, I love that term branding, because, I don't think too much about it. It's just, my brand is
Who you are.
radically me, authenticity, right?
Mhm.
And I think LinkedIn is a cesspool for people looking for jobs. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm self-employed. I don't need a job, so I don't plug into LinkedIn. Excuse, with all due respect, right? So my LinkedIn page, I don't put too much time and effort into it. I choose to swim in the cesspool that is Facebook. I, I like most financial advisors, wasted 10 years of my career trying to be um, this this fake human being that everyone could like, right? I spent years of my career, and granted, I've been doing radio for all that time, and but I would do radio bits where I would, thoughtfully use my words in a way as to not offend anyone, as to be approachable by people from all different walks of life and different voting, you know, perspectives and such. And I don't know, something during COVID. I don't know what it was. I just got kind of sick and tired of all of the fake theatrics. Um, could be that I'm in Charleston. There's a lot less of that here than in the cities. Every time I go to New York, I just get caught in these like loops of what do you do for a living? And it's like we all do the same thing. We all live in New York. It just depends on which bank you work for. I just got kind of sick and tired of the theatrics, and I see a lot of that in social media in particular. Everyone's all hat, no cattle. And also from my perspective, I get to sit down with thousands and thousands of individuals, and I've come to see that the people who look at you through their nostrils, the people who, with the perfect kids and the perfect car and the perfect neighborhood, like when they come into my office and we kind of peel back the curtains and we start to see, what their net worth is, where their money is, and you begin to realize that a lot of those individuals are not financially flush. And it's the people who beat to the sound of their own drum. It's the people who don't give a rip about what you and I think of them, uh, are the ones living fulfilled lives, living lives of abundance, who are charitable to churches and children and charities and having a real impact on the world. So maybe I just took a page out of their book. I really, and a beautiful thing about being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, like I don't really care what any of you think of me. It doesn't matter. Like if you the write-up for this Wavemaker thing is this guy is a big dumb idiot, like okay, like good chance like my clients aren't going to listen to it. And I know you wouldn't do that, but if you want some advice from this, I would recommend anyone to double down on themselves. You're not going to compete with Vanguard on fees. You're not going to compete with a big hedge fund on sophisticated trading algorithms and technology. But Vanguard and the most successful hedge fund in the world can't compete with Adam Curran on Adam Curran, right? And how disgusting is it that I just spoke in the third person? But I am me. I can double down on me. No one's mom was a clown. No one's dad was an engineer. No one is unapologetically as conservative as I am. And I think people gravitate to that level of authenticity. And I guess you can call it my brand or what have you. But there's a lot of financial advisors maybe watching this right now, and you know what I'm talking about. You're trying to appeal to everyone. The sooner you stop trying to appeal to this group of people that don't share your worldview, and maybe your brand is on the opposite side of the aisle, you're a bleeding heart liberal, I would encourage you to go for it. Go for it, and don't help these unenlightened people who vote with their right hand. Because my life has gotten better because of it. My firm gathers more assets because of it. It swung open doors like the God Bless America ETF because of it. And I think people know it. You know it in your soul when you see someone who's virtue signaling, or all those things I announced, perfect house, perfect kids. It's just like, ugh, show me your warts, show me your scars. That's the connective tissue. That's the stuff I like seeing when I'm with another professional and they admit to me they don't have it all figured out, or they're a mess, or they show some vulnerability. I know I'm with one of the real ones. I know I'm with someone who I want to double down on and invest some time and energy into.
Yeah, we hear it a lot, the importance of authenticity and the unique value prop. It's a crowded marketplace. There's a lot of strategies out there, both ETFs and other investment vehicles. If you're not going to bring something true and unique, then the chances of success are much smaller. So as we wrap up, Adam, I thought, given your focus on retirement, all the research you've done on it, your books, your conversations every day on the topic, are there any lessons here you want to share, any anecdotes of, when it comes to retirement planning and investing for retirement, anything that we keep doing wrong, or anything that we're finally learning to do better? Any lesson we can impart before we wrap up?
Yeah, overwhelmingly, and this, I could be, speaking my book right now, meaning the people I generally find myself in front of. Overwhelmingly, people are worried about insert financial fear here: inflation, a presidential election cycle, the stock market crashing, interest rates popping or dropping, a war in Ukraine. Insert financial fear here. And generally, people who accumulate wealth have what I call a healthy level of paranoia. The reason they have $1 million is because they were concerned about their financial future. So they made the business decision to stash away 10% of their income into their 401k. They made the business decision to pay off their house's mortgage and, drive cars till the wheels fall off. So they accumulate wealth. And then someone rings a bell and go, hey, Bob and Sue, you guys are old now, so it's time to retire. And the idea of retiring is a terrifying proposition. They've spent their entire life squirreling money away, accumulating. And then somewhere along the lines, they say, yeah, I should retire. I have enough money here. And Social Security kicked in and Medicare kicked in. And what I find happens to the lion's share of Main Street middle class millionaires, and this is where I have to laugh, because most ivory tower financial company commercials come out of like Manhattan, where they have someone who thinks they have the pulse on middle class Americans, but are completely removed from reality, living in New York. But most financial marketing surrounds this idea of you'll never outlive your money, or if you don't work with us, you're gonna you're gonna outlive your money and wind up welcoming people to Walmart and eating cat food. What I find overwhelmingly is people can retire significantly sooner than they ever thought humanly possible, and they could be spending more money on a month by month basis than they ever thought possible. More money each and every month than they could shake a stick at. Oftentimes more money than what they had while they were working. But most retirees, because they have this healthy level of paranoia, are pecking at their money like chickens because they're worried about the next financial disaster or calamity. And they're cruising to be the wealthiest person in the cemetery. Because you and I both know our 60s and our 70s are tremendously precious. I've come to see, having helped thousands of people retire for a while now, people are not immortal. And as they get into their late 70s and their early 80s, generally, if God even gives them those precious years, they start to slow down. They get dealt a medical diagnosis. They, their energy levels, they're less prone to go over to Europe and live in Italy for 3 months. But people who are healthy and able-bodied in their 60s and 70s ought to be spending money more joyfully and giving themselves permission to create experiences. Because the other thing, you'll worry about money until your final breath. Literally, when you're laying in your hospice bed, getting ready to meet your maker, you're going to worry about money. Oddly enough, you're not going to be sitting around talking to your loved ones about the Roth IRA conversion you did in 2023. You're not going to be talking about how you made an investment in Apple stock or XYZ mutual fund. You're going to be talking about the experiences that you created with your loved ones. So if individuals would focus more of their time and energy on devising ways to spend money confidently to create experiences, and I can't tell you what those experiences are. Some of you just like buying plastic crap. That's your prerogative. But I've come to learn that the greatest money you can spend is on your loved ones, flying them to Italy, getting a house for 3 months, financing the Disney cruise with your grandkids. That's the crap you're going to talk about when you're getting ready to meet your maker. And most people work too long. They peck at their money like chickens. They get dealt a diagnosis. They circle the drain where they have no ability to spend money. And c'est la vie. That's their life. It's a German fairy tale. And what I want to do with my every waking hour is spread the good news. The good news is most of you could be spending more money, retiring sooner. And oh, by the way, while you're at it, if you're sick and tired of supporting woke businesses, we created an ETF you can plug into.
That was perfectly wrapped, Adam. Thank you so much for joining me today. Congrats on the ETF and on the business. Thanks for joining, and thanks everyone for watching the show. See you next time.